in the dust-choked plains of Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers carve life from the barren earth. A story was etched into clay, a legend whispered on the desert winds. It speaks of a time before empires, a time of warring city-states, each a flicker of light in a vast, dark world. It is a tale of Sargon, a name that would echo through millennia, a name born not of kings, but from the reeds of a riverbank. Before he was a conqueror, he was a shadow, an infant adrift. His mother, a high priestess sworn to secrecy, could not claim him. To acknowledge her child was to invite death and dishonor. And so, with a heart heavy as stone, she wove a basket of rushes, sealing it with bitumen against the relentless current. She placed her son within this humble ark, a silent prayer, her only farewell, and cast him upon the waters of the Euphrates. She entrusted his fate to the river gods, to the currents that carried the prayers and curses of her people. The river, that great artery of life and death, became his first cradle, his first trial. The basket drifted, a speck of hope on an indifferent expanse. It bobbed past fishermen mending their nets, past barges laden with grain, past the towering ziggurats of cities that would one day kneel before him. But destiny had chosen a simpler hand to intervene. Aki, a royal gardener, a drawer of water, found the basket snagged amongst the reeds. He was a man of the earth, his hands calloused from toil, his heart unburdened by ambition. He saw not a king, but a child, and in an act of simple compassion that would alter the course of history, he lifted the infant from the water, named him Sharakinder, legitimate him as his own son. Sargon grew in the gardens of Kish, under the shadow of the royal palace. The scent of dates and soil was his world. He learned the rhythm of the seasons, the language of plants, the silent patience of the earth. He knew nothing of his true lineage, nothing of the priestess who birthed him or the river that had spared him. He was the son of a gardener, his hands destined for the spade, not the scepter. Yet, within him, a different seed had been planted, a seed of greatness, watered by obscurity, nurtured in the fertile ground of humility. As a young man, his diligence caught the eye of Yorzababa, the king of Kish. Sargon was brought from the gardens into the palace, not as a prince, but as a cupbearer, a position of immense trust and immense danger. He stood at the king's side, a silent observer in the heart of power. He learned the art of courtly intrigue, the whispered plots, the fragile alliances. He saw how fear and favor were currencies more valuable than silver. He poured the king's wine, his hand steady, his eyes missing nothing. The king saw loyalty, but the goddess Ishtar, the radiant and terrible deity of love and war, saw something more. She saw a vessel for her own ambitions, a mortal man worthy of divine favor. Yorzababa, however, grew uneasy. He was plagued by dreams, dark omens that featured his quiet cupbearer. In one vision, Sargon diverted the king's offerings, an act of sacrilege. In another, blood filled the cupbearer's hands. Fear, cold and sharp, gripped the king's heart. He who had been favored was now seen as a threat. The king, who ruled by divine right, felt his own gods turning against him. He saw, in Sargon's calm demeanor, a storm gathering on the horizon, a challenge to his very existence. The king decided to act. He could not simply execute his cupbearer without cause, so he devised a series of deadly trials, cloaked as royal errands. First, he sent Sargon to Lugal-Zigzi, the powerful king of Uruk, with a secret message. The clay tablet Sargon carried was not a diplomatic greeting, but his own death warrant, a request for Lugal-Zigzi to slay the messenger. Sargon, trusting and unaware, embarked on the perilous journey, but Ishtar watched over him. The legends do not say how he was saved, only that he returned unharmed, the tablet's deadly secret unfulfilled. Lugal-Sitchsi, perhaps seeing a future ally or fearing the wrath of a god-protected man, had refused to carry out the deed. Undeterred, Yorzababa sent Sargon to the furnace where bronze was smelted, a place of infernal heat. The king's orders were for the smiths to cast the cupbearer into the flames. But again, Sargon was delayed, diverted by an unseen hand. He arrived late, after the fires had cooled, and once more walked away from the jaws of death. The cupbearer's survival was no longer coincidence. It was a sign. The palace whispered. The soldiers watched. Sargon's legend began to grow, not from his own deeds, but from the failed attempts to unmake him. He was the man who could not be killed. The fear in Yorzababa's heart turned to terror. The cupbearer was no longer just a man. He was a portent, a living embodiment of the king's downfall. The final confrontation is lost to time, shrouded in the smoke of rebellion and the clash of bronze. But when the dust settled, Yorzababa was gone, and the gardener's son stood in his place. Sargon, the survivor, the chosen of Ishtar, seized the throne of Kish. But Kish was not enough. The warring cities of Sumer, with their petty squabbles and ancient grudges, were a fractured landscape waiting for a single unifying will. Sargon possessed that will. He did not remain in Kish. He marched his followers out into the open plain, and there he founded his own city, Akkad. Its location is now a mystery, a ghost city swallowed by the sands of Iraq. But from this new heart, he began his campaign. He was not just a king. He was a new kind of warrior. His army was not a seasonal levy of farmers, but a standing, professional force bound to him by loyalty and the promise of plunder. They were swift, disciplined, and utterly ruthless. He turned his gaze south, towards the ancient and proud city of Uruk, ruled by the same Lugal-Sitchsi who had once held Sargon's death warrant. The clash was titanic. Lugal-Sitchsi, who had himself united Sumer under his rule, was the master of the old world. Sargon was the harbinger of the new. The Akkadian army, with its superior tactics and unwavering loyalty, shattered the Sumerian phalanx. Sargon captured Lugal-Sitchsi, bound him in a dog collar, and led him in humiliation to the temple of the god Enlil in Nippur, a symbolic gesture that declared a new master had arrived in Mesopotamia. One by one, the great cities fell. Yor-Lagash, Umma. He washed his weapons in the waters of the lower sea, the Persian Gulf, a ritual of ultimate conquest. He shattered their defensive walls, symbols of their fierce independence, and installed Akkadian governors to ensure their submission. The age of the city-state was over. The age of empire had begun. Sargon proclaimed himself king of the universe, a title of breathtaking arrogance and, for a time, undeniable truth. His ambition knew no bounds. He marched west to the shores of the Mediterranean, the cedar forests of Lebanon, and the silver mountains of Anatolia. He campaigned east into Elam, in modern-day Iran. His empire was a tapestry woven from 100 different peoples, 100 different gods, all held together by the force of his will and the might of his army. He standardized weights and measures, created a postal system, and fostered a network of trade that stretched across the known world. The Akkadian language, his language, became the tongue of diplomacy and commerce from Egypt to the Indus Valley. But an empire built by the sword must be maintained by the sword. Rebellion was constant. The Sumerian cities, proud and ancient, chafed under Akkadian rule. Sargon spent his reign in a state of perpetual warfare, crushing revolts with brutal efficiency. The chroniclers speak of the Great Revolt, a massive coalition of cities that rose up against him in his old age. The empire teetered on the brink of collapse. But the old king, his will as unyielding as ever, mounted his chariot one last time. He met the rebels in open battle and annihilated them. He had forged his empire in fire, and in fire he would preserve it. After 56 years of rule, the foundling from the river, the gardener's son, the king of the universe, finally died. His death left a vacuum that his sons struggled to fill. The empire he built would last for another century, a brief, brilliant flame in the long darkness of history, before collapsing under the weight of internal rebellion and external invasion. Yet, the idea of Sargon, the idea of a single man uniting the world under one rule, would never die. His story became a model for every aspiring conqueror who followed, from the Babylonians and Assyrians to Alexander and Caesar. They copied his tactics, his titles, his propaganda. For 2,000 years, scribes in Mesopotamian schools copied the legends of his birth, his rise to power, and his conquests. He was the orphan who became a legend, the man who defied kings and death to forge the world's first empire. His city of Akkad is lost, its bricks turned to dust, his tomb is unknown. But his name, Sargon, endures a whisper from the dawn of history, a testament to the enduring power of ambition, fate, and the will of a single, extraordinary man. His chronicle is a shadow cast across the millennia, a reminder that even the greatest empires are born from a single story.